Hi, my name's Ellen. I'm a horse agility accredited trainer, and this is my mule Inara. And today we're going to talk to you about our all-time favourite obstacle, the noodle walk. The noodle walk is designed to show that your equine can confidently and safely push through a soft barrier when crested. It is constructed using swimming noodles or piping insulation. Each noodle should be at least 3 feet in length with an overlap in the middle of at least 3 inches. The noodle walk is a great confidence building obstacle for equines to learn to push through things. For example, if you are out hacking and you end up in a narrow path with brambles, the equine will be more confident to push through with things touching their sides. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is talk about setting up. So these are your paw noodles here, and they're fairly flexible, wobbly things. They usually come kind of rolled up in a ball like this. When you first get them, they'll be very bent over. So what you need to do is put them under something heavy to start with, just to flatten them all out. So, during the noodle walk, they want to be chest height to your animal, so that high. And they want to have a slight overlap, so you want to have one like that and one with a slight overlap like that on their chest like that, so they push through. Okay, now you can set up your own kind of contraptions to keep these things in place. They can be a real pain to keep in place. What I've used before is rolls of stock wire, because I can kind of just jam it in the gaps in the stock wire and it seems to stay put. Obviously I know Inara knows she's not going to kick out at them and get her feet trapped, and I tend to use really kind of really wound up stock wire so there's not very big gaps in it. Obviously there's a safety issue there that if your horse or mule does kick out, there is obviously wire fencing, albeit in rolls there. What I've got today is some pallets, and with pallets you can slip them in the gaps, like so. Now that one stays put quite easily because the gap is quite tight. If I show you another one, so the gap on this side is a lot looser, and it does that. Okay, so you have to kind of weight it down on the other side. Sometimes you can just tie them around where they enter. Other times you've got to show you. So it's being attached there and it's flopping down like that. If you get a bit of baling twine around that end and tie it down to something on the floor, see the way it lifts it up? So that can help. You might find that once they're set up, they do tend to droop and kind of move about a bit. So what I tend to do if I'm doing a longer session with the noodles is now and again just turn them over so they're like that. Eventually they'll flop down so they look like that. So just turn them over again, just to keep them at that chest height and not too low. Okay, so in starter level you will start out with 2 noodles. So you'll start out with the 2 noodles lapped over like that. And as you build up through the levels, you'll end up doing more and more noodles. So I'm just going to quickly set up some more noodles so you can see how they're set up as you progress up the levels. Okay, so this is the setup now for 4 noodles. So as you see, they're in a row as you go through, so they're not all kind of upright. You're pushing through them, so it creates kind of a big row of noodles to push through. So, get these out of the way. You've got the first set here overlapping, a little bit of a gap, and then the second set there overlapping. My mule's just coming back, she might want to show you that. Second, she's on her way. I'm going to show them the noodle walk. Yeah? Come on then. This way then. you go. Good girl. Yeah, you can have a sweetie. That's a good girl. Okay. So in some of the levels, you'll have up to kind of 10 noodles. So you'll build all the way up from 2 noodles to start with, and you'll gradually build up the amount of noodles you're using. I find that they either love or hate the noodle walk. If Inara, like Inara, they love it, moving up to more and more noodles won't be an issue. If they hate it, obviously there's a lot of work to do just with those 2 noodles. Now, in some of the courses you'll be asked to walk through the noodles first, which means navigating your way through them. So you have to kind of just find your way through them without disturbing them too much for your animal to go through. So you kind of tend to zip in and out. Like that. So that again is asking them to stand cue, ask them to stand while you go through and ask them to come with you. Other times you'll be asked to go around the outside. So like we discussed in the scary corridor, arm out and guide them through the obstacle. Okay, so that's the setup of the noodles. I've now got a very different video for you now, because I've actually got the first ever clips of Inara doing the noodles. So I've got some footage the very first time I introduced Inara to the noodles, and what I'll do is I'll do a voiceover over that footage so you can see that how I introduced Inara to the noodles. Here you go. So to start with, I've got the noodles on the floor here. If your equine is unsure about the noodles, you may want to refer back to the scary corridor video about introducing new things, but they're fairly unintimidating on the floor because they look like poles. So here I'm taking advantage of the fact that they look like poles and just asking her to walk over the noodle to start with, and then she's getting a reward just placed on the floor once she's walked over the noodle. So this is just really getting her used to the noodles and the fact that she can walk over them and they're nothing scary, and they're just something on the floor like a pole. So now I'm going to start touching her with the noodle. I'm going to reward after I've touched her. She was actually really happy with this, so I didn't have to do it in the tiny little stages. You'll see I'm putting her next to her chest because that's where she's going to be pushing through. And then I'm getting her to follow the noodle because she's going to have to kind of push through it. So I'm getting the idea that she's got to walk towards the noodle. Okay, so just setting up now, letting her watch so she can have a good look at it. And I don't know if you can see there, but there's actually quite a big gap between the noodle and the outside obstacles. So she can just go through without touching. And you may want to do this a little bit more than I do it here. Just get her to walk past the noodle while it's upright, without any pressure to actually touch the noodle. Gradually I've moved the outside slightly closer, so she's now got to go through while touching the noodle. You see she had a little bit of a jump then when it touched her belly, but nothing too major. As you see, I'm rewarding every time we go through. So every time she's made an effort to do what I'm asking, she's getting a reward. So she's coming through again. Okay, she jumped it slightly that time, but that's okay, it doesn't matter. Like I said, it's the effort that we're rewarding. So you may find they may jump it or even try to duck under it the first few times they do it, and that's absolutely fine. The main thing is that they're coming through the noodle. Eventually they'll learn that they have to push against it, and that's what you're asking for. Alright, so now I've got 2 noodles set up. And you can't see here, but there's actually quite a big gap that she can get through. So one of the noodles is further forward than the other noodle, so there is quite a gap that you can walk through. So I've gone through here first to show her the way, because they learn by watching. So I've shown her the way, and I've just waited for her. She's decided to go on the outside, which is fine. So what I do here is I've then guided her back and thrown a treat across to the other side of the noodles. And as you see, she actually followed the treat through. So that was kind of more luck than judgment. I saw the opportunity there to ask her to keep her energy going to go through the noodles, and use a reward on the other side, just to ask her to go through. And that's the first time she went through the 2 noodles there. And it was just taking advantage of the situation where she was quite happy and she was just ready to follow that treat and go on through. So I'm just giving her time here. I've placed her some treats on the floor, a bit of a treat trail, so she knows she's got to come forward to get the treat trail. As you see, she ducks under, but that's absolutely fine. She's made an effort to come through where I asked her to come through. She doesn't quite understand what's going on just yet, but that's absolutely fine. She still gets a reward because she's made an effort. Okay, so I'm just rearranging the noodles, asking her to come back through. As you see, the gap is quite wide and she can just about get through with it just touching her sides. Obviously, if your equine needs a bit more time, start with them really wide and just very gradually bring them in. So as you can see, she can kind of zip through without touching them too much. A little bit unsure, but she gets her reward and she's still trying, so she's not very unsure. If she was really unsure, I would have made it wide again. But as you can see, she's still quite willing, so we're keeping it as is for now. Good, a little bit more confidence on that last go there. Okay, so now I'm just going to move the noodles a little bit closer together. So we're starting to get that overlap in the noodles. As you can see, they're quite flimsy and difficult to keep in place sometimes. So I'm just making sure they're remaining at chest height. So I'm going to sneak through. Okay, now I'm just going to wait for her. Now she wants to zip around the outside, but I've managed to get her back. So let's just replay that before we play her going through. She wanted to go round the outside, so what I did is I went further the other way to encourage her not to go that way and to come with me. So I've taken a step that way, that's it. Okay, and now she's coming through and she pushed through really nicely there. So she's got a big reward on the floor for doing that. That was good. So she wanted to zip around the outside, but she thought about it and changed her mind. Okay, so straighten the noodles back up, ask her to come around again. I'm going to try to go around the outside. She's not sure, she's thinking. Good, so there's no pressure and no time limit on this. I've just got to let her come through in her own time. A reward on the floor, that's very good. So this time they're more overlapping. Can you see there's more noodle for her to walk through? Okay, she's trying to step a little bit because she wasn't quite sure because it's overlapping a bit. It looks a bit lower, so she tried to step over there, and that's absolutely fine if they want to do that to start with. They're just getting used to the idea. So don't worry too much if they do big silly steps to come through. At least they're trying to come through and she gets her reward. Okay, so now I've gone around the outside. She's coming through. She's a little bit hesitant, but she's getting more confident. Can you see how much more confident she's getting? So it's just repetition to get that confidence up there. She got a reward by hand that time, so obviously felt that that was good enough to reward her by hand and not just by the floor. So what we're doing this time. So now I'm asking her to stand while I go through. Okay, so I get a certain distance, ask her to come through. Okay, big step up again from her because she's not quite got the idea of it's pushing by her chest and not by her legs, but that's fine. She will get there. So just rearranging again now. Trying to keep them at chest height so they're not looking too droopy, so she's not thinking she's got to step over them. I've gone around the outside, invited her forward. Much more confident, good. Okay, you see my open arms there because I was so happy how confident she was coming through there. So that was really good that time. Okay, so this time I'm going to go around the outside. So you can see my arm is out guiding. Much more confident through the noodles. And even a little trot to finish because she's pleased with herself. Brilliant. Okay, so the next clip is my mistake. I get a little bit cocky and think that we can go through in trot. And as you see, she jumps it. Which I thought was very hilarious at the time. It was very sweet of her for making the effort. So this was basically my mistake. I was asking too much too soon. But it does show up a common error with the noodle walk. Some horses, even from a walk, will think they have to jump it because it looks like a jump if they've done a lot of jumping. So this is a common error, and it's about teaching them the difference between the noodle walk and the jump. So the noodle walk is obviously a different material. The noodles are a lot more flexible than a jumping pole, and eventually they will work out that the noodles with the overlap in the middle means just walk through. If they do jump it, don't worry about it. Go back to maybe one noodle and start again. Give them the option to go around it and just touch it gently on their sides and gradually bring them in again until they learn that they just have to push through it and not jump it. But don't worry too much if they do jump it to start with. It's kind of it's one of the common errors with the noodle walk, so don't worry too much if your equine does to turn into a show jumper all of a sudden. You can get around that by just bringing them apart again and starting again. Because she jumped the noodles in trot, I then asked for a nice slow walk into the noodles so she could go really steady and just gently push through. When she'd done that, she got a big reward on the floor. If she'd have been unsure about the noodles, which she could have been after doing that jump, what I could have done was opened it right back out again and brought the noodles gradually back in. Thankfully, she was fine and she did a nice push through, big reward on the floor, and then we left it there for the day. because I'd made the mistake asking her to do it in trot. So then I asked her to do it again, nice gentle walk. It was a nice positive way to finish, so we left it there. So that was Inara's first session with the noodles. Okay, so now I'm going to talk to you about the animals that don't particularly like the noodle walk. And I think that's because it's something that's touching their sides. So to start with, like I showed you in the video but only briefly, I touched Inara with the noodles, and you can do that to start with, gradually just using positive reinforcement. So introduce them to the noodle like we did with the scary corridor work and scary object work. Get them to want to come to it using positive reinforcement, and then start gently touching them. Somewhere they're happy to start with, I usually tend to go for the shoulder. You know your animal. Inara's favourite place to be touched than you is the shoulder. So I'll start at the shoulder, take it away, reward. And then I'll move to somewhere a little bit further up from the shoulder, take it away, reward. A little bit further up, take it away, reward, until you can kind of touch the whole body with it. And also, once they've done that, try and get used to the noise, because these are quite, I don't know if you can hear on the camera, quite noisy things when they're brushing against them. So you can almost just start brushing them with the noodles. So when they're having their grooming sessions, do with the brush, and do a bit with the noodle, a bit with the brush, and just get them used to it in that way. Sometimes it takes a big confidence to actually push through the noodles, but like I discussed in the short clip, get them used to it far apart to start with, bringing it in so they learn they can push through that obstacle. For some animals, like my Misty, she pushes through post and rail, so this has been fairly easy for her, but other animals are much more cautious of pushing through things. Like I say, it's either a love or hate it thing with these animals. Some really like it. I think it's the feeling that they like on their sides, and others dislike the feeling on their sides. But if you can just keep using that positive reinforcement, so the first time they do go through it, give them a massive reward, yes you've done it, and then give them a break from it, okay? So don't keep pressuring, or don't pressure at all, but don't keep doing it. If they're a little bit unsure, let them do it once, massive reward, give them time to think about what they've done, and then come back to it after a little break. So I'm going to get Inara back to say goodbye to you, and I think that's pretty much it for the noodles. Okay. Good, all good. Okay, so thank you very much from me and Inara. I hope you enjoyed the video, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.